everybody. I'm technically a Michigan State alumni, so this is cool to be able to speak to my people, so to speak. I've been really busy the last few years. I think I graduated from the program, the graduate program, about 2003, I believe. So it's been a while, but learned a lot actually since then and before then. So I've been with this company now actually called Stellantis. We'll talk about that in a second. That's my title right now. I've had a few titles. I've been called CEO before. Now I actually don't know what my title is right now. We're still trying to figure out what it is because we just merged with another big company. So we're actually the fourth largest automaker in the world now by I think by volume. We were seventh before, so it's pretty interesting. And that's exactly the story of my career. You know, I actually purposely joined Chrysler back in 1992 as the underdog. I actually loved the idea of helping because it was kind of in trouble. It was the distant third runner of the big three in Michigan and Detroit. And had not much of a global presence, a little bit in Europe, and that's about it. So we've come a long way, let's put it that way. And watching the company transition, we were for a while owned by Mercedes-Benz, as you know, from the late 90s until mid 2000s. That was a tumultuous relationship. Started off really awesome and then kind of fell apart. Then we had private equity come and rescue / buy us, try to take us apart for 2 years. And then I met a wonderful man, Mr. Marchioni from Fiat, who we've been with now almost 11 years. It's been amazing, really grew. That's when most of the awesome things happen. But even during those bad times, I love bad times because they make you dig deeper for solutions. They make it deeper for yourself. You learn a lot of lessons about who your real friends are, so to speak, whether they're suppliers or business friends. And some of the guys like me, I've been there a long time. You're going to laugh when you hear almost 30 years, which is like, what? Who stays anywhere 30 years in this day and age? In my case, I've had so much fun. It doesn't feel like 30 years. It feels like 15 years, but the company's changed around me. So I've had now 9, this will be my 9th CEO and the big boss, you know, I'm the second level underneath the big boss. And with every CEO comes a different leadership style, a whole different way of carrying themselves, how they run the business, what they expect. So I've actually learned a lot by observing, by adapting myself. And now I'm a little older now. I'm in more of a leadership position. I've been head of design for the whole group since 2013, and in North America since 2008. So I've been in this role a long time, but I'm still learning. Every day is a lesson. So with that, I want to give you a little memory lane. So FCA is probably the name you know most recently from us, Fiat Chrysler Automobiles. The joining of two, again, family type businesses, the Fiat families, the Agnellis, the Chrysler, and us have joined. This is my cheesy picture in the dome. I haven't been in that place in a while. This is our design office. It's our latest Wagoneer behind me. But a lot of people, when they think of Detroit, they might think of this a little bit, this rundown, gritty city. It really isn't that anymore. We know the lights are on again. And I actually went to school in Detroit and saw some of that. Actually, there's still, you can find it if you want to, these slums kind of situation. But the city in many ways is thriving. COVID and everything, we are in a good way. And I took this picture right before COVID, the fall of last year of 2019. And it was amazing to see it feel almost like Manhattan in a way. You know, it was really alive. And it's not lost on to me how much the industry affects Detroit. You know, we're closely knit now. There's obviously a big mortgage industry here. There's all kinds of marketing that happens here. The auto companies are one of the biggest consumers of marketing, so there's a lot of great agencies here. A lot going on in this city, and it really is important to see it thrive for me. And then my other city is kind of the Detroit of Europe. I go to Turin all the time. I used to fly to Turin once a month, actually, for the last 7 years. 2020, I only went one time in the beginning, right before everything got weird. And it's an amazing place. I still visit. You know, sometimes I take an extra couple days and I go wherever. I mean, you can go 2 hours in any direction and see amazing things. You can go to Monaco, you can go to France, Switzerland. Just amazing. So learning a lot about the culture differences. They love art, they love style. So it's a source of inspiration. And as a view from near my hotel when I stay there, it's just amazing. Look at the Alps over there. You can go ski in an hour. You can go, you know, world-class skiing. And there's our story now. So I have studios in Detroit. We have about 400 people here. In Centro Stile, we have another 350 designers and all kinds of modeling and different things. See all the brands that we take care of on the left there. We even have a style center in Brazil. And that just recently got a huge renovation. We have about 160 people there. And Brazil used to take our products and modify them a little bit. Now they're actually just doing custom products for their market. As their tastes evolve, as their society becomes much more advanced, and they want the same things they see. And when they see on social media and they see all the things the rest of the world is doing, it's the same story in India, same story in China, and all over the world. Everyone is realizing that, hey, we want the future too, you know? So it's really cool to see it happening real time. And we're part of that story. We're a big part of that. So TBT. I hate doing this, but you know, everyone asks me so many questions about myself. And this was my family back in the day, back in, I must have been 6, 7 years old. I actually remember this day. I begged my mother to let me buy that little car. So I was always looking at design, whether it was scale models. I used to actually glue them together myself. I just love cars. I've always loved the idea of cars. And I grew up in the ugly 70s. Cars were disgusting back then. They were just, yeah, they were ugly. They were really cool in the 50s and 60s. They were a little bit ugly in the 70s, and they became, I think, nice again right around late 90s, 2000s. But I remember in high school and middle school telling my friends I wanted to be a car designer or something. I didn't know what it was. No one really, every time I went to a school counselor, they had no idea what to do with me. I would draw cars in the margins of my math books, and they would say, you know, exactly, why don't you go study math and maybe you can become an engineer. They never could help me figure out how to become an artist. So I actually did not go to engineering school or business school initially. Um, I actually dropped out. I started going to college in my hometown of Montreal, and I dropped out and worked at a local hardware store, and I would unload trucks, and I would, you know, do what this man's doing here. And I was actually happy. I got promoted very quickly. I was there 8 months, and they want to make me manager of the place. And I was like, this is it, my career. I'm gonna be a hardware store manager. And my dad says, boy, you know, I have Caribbean parents, man. And my father pulled me by the ear and sit me down and have a long discussion with me. He goes, I didn't come all the way to America to have you do this. And he gave me the whole lecture. So, and then my brother did the same thing. My whole family like descended on me, talked some sense into me. And one of my aunts was a very go-getter woman. And she made me write a letter to, at the time, Chrysler Motors. You can see it. I have it in my office, proudly framed. I actually lost that letter for almost 15 years. And I found it when my dad passed away. I found it folded very nicely in his effects. And I said, oh, there it is, you know. So I took it out, framed it, and I'll never forget this letter. And you know why this is important to me? Of course, Chrysler wrote me back and recommended the schools, but it taught me a lesson to write back to kids. When kids write me all the time, I make sure I take the time to write them back, because you never know who you can affect. There's always somebody out there that needs some inspiration. So this letter got me out of the basement of my family's house and back into searching for my future. So I found my way to CCS, and that's me a junior year at CCS, which is a beautiful school in Detroit, doing car designs. I used to just love sketching and sketching and sketching. And there I could finally do it. What was illegal in high school, I could do now as an actual education. So it was so neat not to get yelled at for sketching. And what was cool about the experience at the school, I felt like it's kind of going to the X-Men mansion. Everyone was weird, and I felt so at home with everyone that was like me, you know? So it's kind of cool, but it was also intimidating because there's so many talented kids. I was like, oh my gosh, these guys can draw. So what I thought I could do, and I thought I was okay drawer, when I got there, I was like nothing compared to the other guys. So I really raised my game, and we all kind of helped each other get better. And then that's me telling my story. So that's me in Chicago. So when the Chrysler 300 came out, was a project I had a lot to do with back in the day. And actually, they made me head of the rear drive studio after that. All the muscle cars, I had part in that, the Viper. So I'm talking to some kids, some art kids, just like me again, some art kids in Chicago, and they loved it. Did the story of this guy who was a misfit, because they all felt the same way. No one knew what to do with them. So I try and explain my story as I am a little bit to you today. And then I made a promise to my dad to get a graduate's degree, because he never trusted my art degree. He thought it was not worth the paper it was printed on. So he said, you should go get a real degree. I'm like, whatever that means. So I did. I went back to school during my work time. So our wonderful company, Chrysler, had a Michigan State graduate program for employees, you know, executive MBA basically. And it was an awesome experience. And I learned so much about business. I was surrounded by some of the greatest minds. And I learned as much from my mates as I did as the teachers. And visiting, we went to Europe and Amsterdam and saw these great companies. But it's interesting, that paper, that degree, sure, like my dad said, it opened doors for me, because here I'm a designer, and all of a sudden I'm being asked to do business things. So one of those things was to run the business side of SRT. So I actually ran the SRT brand for almost 6 years, and we developed it as a brand. We actually went crazy developing SRTs. everything. We'd SRT your minivan if you asked us to, and created all these performance. And that's the team behind me. And a lot of those guys are still doing awesome stuff at the company. And we created some pretty notable vehicles that were actually getting crazy good margins. We're creating profits that people hadn't seen from these cars before, because enthusiasts will always pay a premium for real performance. So we had a lot of fun, and that led to running the race team. So as part of the marketing arm of SRT, this is beyond my dreams. I could never have imagined this. This is like, oh my God, I used to play with model cars. Now I'm playing with real full-size stuff. So that's me with the team. We actually won the series. We won the ALMS series after being absent for years. We had a third of the budget of everyone, but it was that gumption. The team was just so hungry to win. Riley and Scott Racing and a lot of our SRT engineers are in that picture. And we won. We beat the Corvettes, which had a crazy budget, the Porsches, everybody. We wiped the floor with them. For 2 years, we were pretty. It took us a year to get our stuff in order, and then second year we won the championship. So really exciting. Right down to the wire too. Right, we came down to the last corner of the last race. We beat them by like, it was crazy. It was so like everybody was on the edge of their toes. And we also I ran the NASCAR team for about the same amount of time because I ran motorsports, and we hadn't won a championship in almost 20 years. And we actually beat everybody. We had 2 cars. GM had 12, Ford had 10 cars, Toyota had 6 cars. We only had 2 from one team. So we came in there, and the difference for our team is our engineers supported this, where the other ones, they contract out the work, right? So we helped build we didn't have a single engine failure in 2 years. And that's why we're able to win. We just kept amassing points. So it was an amazing experience. And then again, this career takes me crazy places. I got to meet Jay Leno, do all kinds of stuff with Hollywood stuff. And then one of my highlights was the set of Fast and Furious 5. I'm hanging out with Vin Diesel on the set. Turns out he doesn't know too much about cars, but great actor, awesome actor. And right outside of that scene was The Rock. My wife has a picture of him. I didn't want to bore you, but what an amazing experience. If you had told me when I was a young designer I would meet these level of actors and be on a set of a major movie, I wouldn't have believed you. But I'll never forget, we gave them 55 cars and they only gave us back 5. They wrecked all the other ones. It was a very expensive movie. But I was like, hey, it's marketing, right? So that's when I was CEO of Dodge. But my heart, honestly, with all those amazing experiences, my honest to goodness heart is in design. I still love design. As a matter of fact, I love my team. A lot of these guys and girls have been with me right from the beginning. We've been together a very long time. So we don't even feel like work. We call it work family is how we describe it. They feel like my brothers and sisters. They don't really, I'm not the boss. And if you look at the way we carry ourselves, you wouldn't even know who the boss is. And that's the whole point. We don't wear ties. We've been doing casual dress forever because we don't want to have that crazy hierarchy stuff going. But they know at the end of the day, I have to make the call. But we have a great relationship. And this is our reality these days. This is how we meet, just like a lot of you. We're doing this thing, this work from home thing, and it works well. We spend as much time socializing on this as we do really hard work. So great discussions. In some ways, this works better because everyone has the floor. It's a really good process. So we've been doing that. So when I say I love my job, I really do mean it. Get to work with young students. It has to be an intern. But the intern process is almost identical to the actual process. So we throw our interns into the deep end of the pool so that they learn what it's like to be a real world designer. Now, we don't always draw cars as crazy as what you see on the screen, but we let the interns draw those cars like I was drawing in my 3rd year of CCS. But sometimes there's a nugget from those crazy ideas that end up on the production car. So we never take them for granted. So it's a very, again, exciting process. And that's, most cars, almost all cars start like this. Every design starts off in a very ideation way. That's actually the Renegade, the very sketch that I picked that became the Renegade. You can see it back, it says 2011 down there. That car became the global Renegade design, and that was the Pacifica. And from that sketch, this was a tiny sketch about this big, about 2 inches or 40 millimeters. And that we just saw the character of the car, and it evolved into the van that we know, right? So we mill it out. It's clay, full size clay, and then boom, the car, right? So it's a really cool process. I'm going through it at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And of the team, this is the entire team involved. So yes, there's a lead designer, lead interior exterior designer, but then there's clay modelers, there's studio engineering, there's HMI, there's all kinds of disciplines, research clinic people. It's just a whole army. And this is just a tip of the iceberg, but what it takes to make one vehicle work is just crazy. And the minivan is actually probably the toughest design because it's like a Swiss Army knife. There's just so much to it. It's not just Sports cars are easy, to be honest with you. And a term I use a lot is pollination. I can barely say it. Pollination, sorry. What I mean by this term is, especially now more than ever, design, engineering, marketing, everything is intertwined. There's no such thing as a one-dimensional business, right? So you have to care about other parts of the business. You have to be curious, and one of the things I've done in my career, I've asked so many questions. Every meeting I go to, I ask questions far beyond my area of expertise on purpose, because I want to learn the whole thing, understand the soup to nuts of the business proposition. And also in our world, we use so many different types of talents. We have artisanal talents like this. You have clay modeling. We've been learning to hire people outside. Usually we just go to the CCS school that I went to and hire the same type of exterior designer. Now we're opening up our minds. So, let's get a textile designer. Instead of trusting a supplier to tell us what to do, why don't we do it ourselves? So we design the textiles right from the beginning. We use sustainable materials now. We engineer the cost out from the design so it looks good, but it doesn't cost much. Fashion designers, this guy came from New York City. Never in a million years imagined he would work in a car company, but he's so excited about what he gets to do and the budget he gets to play with. And then same thing, these are pictures taken from all over the world, our team in Brazil up there. Everything you can see on a car, every color, every stitch, every finish is done by someone, is a choice someone made, right? Every single, there's people that are involved with that. And then you can see this actually happens to be our studio in Italy. Same process. And I could say Volkswagen, GM, Ford, everybody has more or less the same process, but it's a fun atmosphere, especially in the beginning when you're really searching for different ideas. And then there's a whole digital surfing thing that just is fairly recent. We were aggressive about 20 years ago, but the last 5 years it's really taken off as the computer software is so powerful now that you can design the car virtually. Actually, this year we've designed almost everything 100% virtual and are milling everything out. The scale isn't perfect, but we're getting to the point where we can trust the digital media almost 100%. And you can see the car in the background was a math model, and the car in the foreground was never touched by human hands other than a little bit of finishing. So it's really getting to be exciting. We're always going to need the artisanal modeler, but the computers have really come a long way to help us. We design, again, the details, the science of the lighting is nuts. It's not just throwing light out of the car. It's really a very, very critical process. And that was taken a while ago. The technology is much more advanced, but this is me actually having a design review. So now what's different about it now, I can have a review with my team in Brazil from my office here and just put those ocular things on, and we were discussing very important things. So it's pretty cool. This was the beginning when we were testing different versions of the technology. And then I love the variety of what we make. I'm not trying to pitch product to you. I'm just trying to show you how far ranging what we do. You have aggressive trucks, you got minivans, you got electric Jeeps, you got the famous Ram brands. And then on the other side of the ocean, we have these awesome European cars, all the way from Maserati, Alfa Romeo. You see them there, even our Brazilian truck called the Toro. So it's pretty cool. Of all the companies out there, we have probably the most dynamic range of brands just because of the way we came together to become what we are now. And of course, you can see our global. This is our most global vehicle, the Renegade and the Compass. We actually build them in 5 different plants around the world. And with that comes all these inputs, right? The first time we did it was an export from the American designers. Now all those regions have lived with the product 3-4 years, and they have a lot of ideas of what the next one needs to look like. So my phone is always ringing, so to speak. And because of that, the Jeep brand has grown. So talk about a business success. Look at that from in 5 years, how much it's grown, right? And that's product that's reaching globally, that's listening, putting your ear on the ground, what people want. And we're not stopping there. We have some new products coming this year, trying to understand the future. This is launching right now, actually. We're in the plant tomorrow, breaking the bottle on the hood, so to speak, as the new Grand Cherokee launches. Our big boss is going to go see the car tomorrow at the Mack plant in Detroit. I'm very proud of this because we've been able to hire close to 4,000 employees to build this new one. So it's really cool bringing business back to the city and stuff. And look at that interior. So that was, we're raising the game on that too. So we're competing with, the best brands in the world. But when you look at innovation, people ask me a lot about what's innovative about what you do. Well, it depends how you look at it. When you talk to the extreme Jeepers, they want the thing to be the most capable off-road. This doesn't necessarily help you go to the grocery store, but that's what a Jeep, hardcore Jeep enthusiast considers innovation. What more can you make my vehicle do off-road and well? And there's even people that, glamping is becoming so popular now as people, it's one of the safest things you can do, go out in the woods and be by yourself. So people are investing all kinds of money in their Jeeps, and this happens to be a Gladiator modified. to do exactly that, to camp and stay in the wilderness. And now if you can actually get a signal out in the wilderness and do all of your work from your tent. You can be anywhere you want and conduct business. So people are really getting into this trekking thing and asking us to really take our Wrangler further and further. And then there's this other side of it, right? So I didn't expect this, coming up as much as I see it now. But those cars, remember I told you I was head of SRT and did all those cars. Over the years, this cult has started. Like, so this is a picture taken in California a few years ago. And we've had even bigger ones than this, up to 1,600 people show up with all different versions of these cars. And they've created a sub community within the car culture, right? And you have this in California, you have it in Texas, we have it in Michigan, we have all these states have different clubs. And this picture, I love this one. This is from the Peachtree Club in Atlanta. They do these awesome Instagram posts with their cars lined up in a rainbow thing. And these are all, and you ask, we have the coolest colors. And this is because we get pressure from our customers, right? You can see their purple shirts in the foreground. So they want innovation in terms of the craziest colors we can put on a car, right? So a lot of stuff that makes my head hurt. And then there's the other side. People says, how many beers can I put in the side of my Ram truck with a drain plug to get all the ice out afterwards? So, but then there's this thing, so we look at technology and trucks. So the Ram brand, funny story, the Ram truck that you see on the road every day actually won Luxury Car of the Year 2 years ago. So it beat out Mercedes-Benz and Lexus, not like a truck beat out the car world because of the interior and the technology. So that blew our minds, like, wow. Our truck is being recognized as a luxury machine. And then we have a brand new supercar that's really going to talk about electrification and lightweight materials. So we're playing with that. And on the other end of the spectrum, we launched our first, I would say we have an electric one before, but this one's a really deeply engineered, purpose-built electric 500e that's just started selling right now in Europe, doing quite well. So we're in the process of now disrupting ourselves. You've heard about disruption. It's a very in vogue term. And I do believe that you have to kind of stop what you're doing sometimes and say, am I just doing repeating what I always do, or should I need to go a different way? And we looked at, even years ago, we were looking at the trend of electrification. And when you see the data on this car, I always laugh because back in 2008, we had a fully electric concept car and the world wasn't quite ready for it back then. And this is just at the time when Tesla was starting to really pick up steam and be known. We didn't bite at the time. The business case didn't make sense, but we've never lost that vision to try to go there. Even the Chrysler brand was looking at hydrogen electric stuff. So we're still on the case. We're just doing it quietly, but we're about to launch a whole bunch of cool electrified vehicles. So stay tuned on that. In the meantime, everyone is. I mean, if you look at the future, a lot of it's a little kooky right now because we're kind of exploring. The designers are realizing, hey, if I don't have the engine anymore, I can do whatever I want. I don't have to have a big radiator. The electric motors can be differently placed. So the aesthetic of electric cars can finally catch up to the technology. Right now, they're kind of adaptations of familiar cars, but the future is going to be very interesting in the next 5 years. So it's an interesting space. Then you have the autonomous thing, which honestly was a bit of a false flag. About 5 years ago, there was all this craziness. Cars are going to be driving themselves. A lot of CEOs are embarrassed now because they thought the highways would be full of autonomous cars already, and it didn't happen because it's a lot harder than you think. I mean, it's easier. You think walking and chewing gum is difficult. Imagine a car that can drive through, Manhattan traffic by itself. Good luck. So in closed communities, it'll happen. In controlled environments, it's not so hard. But in a random world, it's a lot harder. But in the meantime, all those technologies are going to make cars safer. So finally, the last little piece of my thing here is we are hunting white space. You're going to hear these kind of words. I know a lot of you are studying some very different things, but the science world is crashing into the auto world like crazy. So we're hiring new kinds of talent from places we never imagined because the automobile is becoming a masterpiece of science, right? So we're measuring, is a person drowsy? We're measuring their heart rate. We're measuring if they're awake or asleep so that the autonomous stuff can take over or not, or remind you to wake up. All kinds of neat stuff to help, but also to help ourselves to make the car as safe as humanly possible. And one of the vehicles, this is a really cool car because everyone on this team, except for one or two managers, was a millennial. So we asked there's engineers in this picture, there's scientists in this picture, there's our best electrification team. And we said, go lock yourselves up in a room and design the ultimate vehicle for a emerging family, in America. So they came up with the portal. And actually, 3 of the leads were women. And they designed a vehicle that they thought would be the perfect answer. So fully electrified, fully connected vehicle. And they called it a third pace. So they came at it very differently. So a lot of the dudes would do like race cars and performance cars, and the women came at it saying, hey, let's create a space between the office and the home, an escape pod, something to take you away from your troubles. So they designed this incredible. These were the inspirational pictures. I would never have put this picture up for a car. I mean, my head exploded when I saw it. But it makes a lot of sense when you see the interior of the car. It came out exactly like that. And of course, all the stuff that you expect in your house is now expected in the car. Sketches were really cool, really changing the configuration of the interior. And then the final product is a little more automotive on the outside, so it kind of speaks to the brand. But the interior is so cool. It's all glass, so you're connected with the outside. It has all cool lighting to tell you what's going on with the charging. Kind of very different aesthetic, very product design. And then the accessibility. The car opens up and it's almost like an atrium, inviting you in. And you could do yoga. Again, I wouldn't have thought of this, but can you clear out the seats and do exercise while you're waiting? Very cool. Sorry. So anyway, and then it kind of has a relationship. The car actually has a back and forth relationship with you and says hello to you and stuff like that. So all this is stuff we're on our roadmap that we're looking at now. The car created a lot of neat ideas for us to put in our future vehicles. And then we had a little showing of this at the CES show last year. And then just the way we're thinking about the car, the car is no longer in the center, it's the people in the center, right? So we're trying to design the whole experience around the owner. Again, requiring people from Carnegie Mellon and from Michigan State and U of M, different types of scientists are coming to us. We're asking them to come to us to help us solve for this, where we're not designing a car anymore, we're designing an existence, right? So it's really exciting. So last but not least, obviously this kid, we know becomes this kid. So it makes us hire this guy. So we're hiring a very different way to communicate to the customer, right? So now if you look at cars, you've seen this. The cars are taking over. This information is becoming so. This is actually the interior of our new Grand Wagoneer concept, and it's full of tech. There happens to be a screen where you can watch whatever you're watching in your living room, put it on pause, go to your car, and continue watching it. These are all things customers have asked us to do, and sure enough, we're doing it. So I think the future will require unforeseen collaboration from all walks of life, not just the kid from design school or engineering. It's going to be a whole bunch of talents that we need. So we're actually going all the way to elementary school to promote our business, because we're finding that a lot of people are kind of not interested in the auto industry. They think, that's a laggard world. We want to go to the Silicon Valley and all that. But I will tell you that the auto industry is really overnight transformed itself into one of the most exciting places again to work. It's no longer just stamping metal and engines, So we're actually, we also believe in art. So STEM was missing an A. So I've, really promote A, because I believe art needs to be part of this discussion of science. Because really, as we go forward, if you look at, your iPhone, if you look at, what's that vacuum cleaner, Dyson, right? It's art and science mixing together to make products amazing and beautiful. Same thing with a car, same thing with the infotainment system. So we actually go to these middle schools, and that's one of my designers promoting the whole thing, the whole story of the car. And a lot of kids do say, wow. And we've actually had them, we have actually had people follow through and end up at our company from this, just starting to see it. And now we're going even deeper. These are now grade school kids. I'm so desperate, I'm going to grade school level to find the next engineers, designers, and people that are interested. But so anyway, that might be a little creepy, but we're doing everything possible to get these kids excited. We even brought models, these are scale models, into their schools, gave them some tools so they could play with the clay. And it worked. They were really they hadn't thought about it before, right? So they left that day, and hopefully we left an impression on them. But I think it's never too early to cultivate dreamers. So that's where I'm at. And in the end, it goes back to the theory I was telling you when I went to college about feeling. Not that I'm a superhero. That's not the point. The point is it takes a team to make it, to figure it out, right? So I always love this analogy of the X-Men and all those kind of, movies where everyone has a special skill. And I'm a big believer that everyone has something they do that's just, they have a knack for it, right? So if you take 10, 20, 30, a team of 30 people, they all have a knack, you put them together, all of a sudden they're invincible. So that's the idea that, no one person can make any great product. It takes a team. So learning to work in teams is a good thing to do, right, from your point in life, but throughout your whole career, it's something you have to get really good at, is being a team member. And then finally, that's my reality now. So we are now merging with a French company called Peugeot Citroën, and we have all these brands to play with. So my head is once again exploding, because there's so much fun to be had. We don't plan to cancel any of these brands. They all have a very unique personality and purpose. So just like people, we're going to try to make the best of it. So that's it. So that's my my slides. So Don't know how long that took. I apologize if it was a bit long.
That's all right. I mean, I'm pretty sure all of us could see the passion spewing out of those slides and everything you said. You know, uh, we're lucky to have speakers on this panel who really, really love their job. So I'll jump right into a few questions that I have for you before we ask everybody else for their questions. So we spoke about your passion
Yeah.
and how much you love design, how you were sketching cars in your math notebook, right? But we're all in college and we're learning how important our GPA is. So I want you to talk about. I'd love to hear your opinion on the trade-off between your GPA and your
Hmm.
actual passion or your experience.
Wow, that's a good one. And some companies do look at that. If you have too low of a GPA, you don't even qualify at all, right? So that's something to make sure you don't fall below, I don't know, 3.2 or something like that. But don't obsess. I don't think it's healthy either to obsess. My daughter's one of those people. If she doesn't have a 4.2, forget it. So you have to be careful not to run yourself into the ground and balance your life and remember to live a little bit and breathe. But most companies at the end of the day, especially now, they want to meet you. They want to understand what you're made of because they know high school, college has a lot of distractions. There's things that can happen that might affect a grade, or you might be loaded up with one class that drags you down. So it's really about where you at the time that you graduate, right around the last, let's say, year, last 7-8 months. Can you really bring it home? Can you show a big improvement? Are you ready to experiment and have great interviews and really learn how to interview? That's so important. Hopefully you make the cut, but they usually give people a chance if they see the basics. If you went, obviously you're going to a great school, so that gives you a big leg up. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the interview. I've had horrible interviews where kids, I shouldn't say kids, young prospects look at me in the eye, and the first thing they say is, "How do I have your job in a few years?" That's how they open the discussion. I'm like, what? It's so aggressive. They're already beelining right to the end game instead of asking, how can I best contribute to the company? And it's like, you have to be more humble than that. So I don't know what happened, but there was a spell where I was getting a lot of these. They know they were good. They had great GPAs, but no skills at all socially, right? So I'd rather have someone that understands the moment, can read the room, even if they're not the most perfect student.
Okay.
Did that help?
Yes, definitely. So
Yeah.
going off of that, I want to ask you, suppose the cutoff is a 3.2,
Yep.
For a job, let's say. Based on their social skills, interviewing skills, all that, would you weigh a 3.9 GPA student more than a 3.3? This is some of the questions that we've been getting. Your
Yeah.
interview process and how you onboard students and how important the GPA is, especially in the automotive industry.
Yeah, it's not fair in my world because as designers, I don't care about the GPA as much because art is different. And actually, some artists do very poorly in tests. They just don't think the same way as, like, I don't test very well. My SATs were nothing to write home about, and my wife would laugh because she breezes through those things. So I in that my world, but there are places where the GPA does matter. Of course, some of the engineering, and the reason that is not because the GPA matters, is because let's say everyone comes in really good, then the next thing they look at is GPA. It's not because, you know what I mean? They don't really care that much. It's more a way to make a choice out of 20, 30. So you have to differentiate yourselves. The other thing that helps us when we're hiring engineers is we're looking at, do they have an extracurricular in there? Like something they took on themselves, an extra class they took, or something they did in society to help, or giving back some way. Because it shows a willingness to, again, to be a team member. It shows a willingness to give a little more of yourself, because sometimes we have to ask people to dig deep. If you're just joining a major company like ours and just want to do your job and nothing else, forget it. We have no interest in you. But if you want to be part of a team, and once in a while you have to rise up and do something bigger, and maybe join forces and help, because we go out in the communities and build homes. We do crazy stuff all the time to help well beyond the job. So it's about being part of this family. We can sense that based on other things that you've done while you were in school. So that's important too. Don't just worry about the GPA.
Absolutely. Going off that, I want to know, how important was your MBA for your career? A lot of students don't go on to do grad school. They prefer to get into the industry right away, right?
Yeah.
In today's world, how important, how essential is a grad degree?
That's very interesting. So in the marketing world, it's pretty darn important. In my world, it was optional. I have a lot of very successful designers. I know many in the world that have not that are at my level at other companies that don't have an MBA. So it's not so critical in my particular design field. But I don't think I would have had those other experiences if I hadn't had my MBA. Like they let me run a brand, they let me run a motorsports team, all those things. Personally, for me, it was a big decoder. When I went to business school, I learned terms I'd never heard of before, because in art school, we never spoke about NPV and things like that. So I learned about business terms, but now a meeting that would have been completely in a different language to me, I can understand. And actually I can contribute. I've learned personally that I've been able to contribute, and my people notice that. The engineers notice that, the marketing team notice that. They know I can speak in their language. So if you're someone who wants to better yourself, I do recommend it if you have the capacity to do it. But one thing I would say, it's not the wisest thing to do your MBA right away. I really recommend 5 years in the industry, of some kind of industry, because a lot of the, especially the executive MBA, a lot of people had 20 years already, in a company. Most of them were about 10 years. They were in their 30s or so, but some of them were 40, 45-year-olds that were frustrated with their careers. And the experience that those people had sometimes was more powerful than anything the teacher could say, because they were talking about real problems, that real business experiences. And they themselves didn't even realize they had gone through so much until they told their story. So we were like sitting there listening to these war stories. It was just amazing. So sometimes a little field experience can actually be cool. And most of the time in business school, you learn from your team. They always set you up in some kind of team, and that's where you learn so much. So it taught me to not be, so myopic, really. That was the biggest lesson.
Okay. That's interesting. So from the hardware store to CEO of SRT and global vice president of product design at Stellantis, you've come a long way. It's been a stellar journey. I was lucky enough to read about it. So we saw the passion, we saw the drive, and we saw all the good side of it. Now I want to hear from you. What were some of the sacrifices that you had to make to get up here? What were some of the things you had to let go?
Well, it started when I was a kid, actually. My parents being Caribbean immigrants, right? They came from Haiti. We actually lived in Montreal for a long time before I moved to the US. They were so scared of me failing. They didn't want their journey to be a waste. So they denied us a lot of fun things. We couldn't go out and play at all, during school week, maybe Friday nights, Saturday nights, maybe. But if there was school the next morning, you couldn't be outside. So right from the get-go, we were sacrificing social. I had no social life to speak. I was the uncoolest kid you could imagine, the biggest nerd in the world. And then I found that even in college, the same thing happened. I went to a college that was pretty hardcore, very tough school. Didn't have any fun. I mean, I didn't go partying, didn't go drinking, didn't do anything. In fact, I was a resident assistant. I busted most of the good parties. I'm the one who broke them up. So I was really hated, So in some ways, I gave up a lot of social life, a lot of those kind of things. And it actually wasn't until my late 30s, that I started having fun, to be honest with you. I was so busy working and learning and trying to survive and pay back student loans and all that stuff. I was broke. I got out of college with so much debt. But now looking back, it's all a blur, and I've had so much fun since then. I've been able to make up for it and then some. So I always tell people that those sacrifices you make, those 5-6 years in college and a little bit after, they're worth it. Everyone thinks your life is, these are my best days from 16 to 22. I'm gonna party, and then all of a sudden it's like, they're flipping burgers. So to me, it's like, it's the other way around. You sacrifice those 5-6 years, and then you have 50, 60, 70 years of prosperity and fun, and I have so much fun. I travel so much. I have all kinds of toys, and give back in ways I couldn't have imagined. Charity stuff. We support a school in Haiti. I mean, so it's like, when you ask me what was ugly, it's so many things. I mean, but I don't regret them. I give up a little bit of fun college days, but it was well worth it.
Okay. So going off of that, you said you had a few years, especially during your college days, that you thought were very productive, right? But could you talk about, was there anything during those days that you did that you're not particularly happy of? Were there any mistakes? Did you regret doing
Yeah,
anything during those?
honestly, this sounds crazy, but the biggest mistake was having a girlfriend. I and I don't mean it that way. So my girlfriend at the time was a lot of work. Let's say she was she had issues, right? So I spent a lot of time trying to help her and very distracted. And honestly, it was probably selfish reasons. I needed to nurture something. I felt, oh, I'm gonna put all my energy into this relationship, and it wasn't necessary. We know kind of each other. I don't really know what her life is about now. But had I gone to go back and do it again, I would have been much just be friends. Let's just leave it easy. You don't have to fill your life with all this drag, this resistance. So that's one big mistake I made, is probably I was out of balance for a few years. Been more worried about my girlfriend's health than my own grades. So that was one thing. The time management was not so wonderful, to be honest with you. As much as I was dedicated and didn't have distractions, I would still waste time, doing things that weren't as productive as I thought. So I wish I would have, and I'm better now as an adult because I have great support system around me. But time management is so critical, man. That's something that you have to plan. You can't. I used to leave stuff. I pulled so many all-nighters I can't even remember. So it's not healthy. Let's say try to avoid the all-nighters. Yeah.
Uh, so you know, you said it was very important about to, like today in your team, you're
Mhm.
surrounding yourself with the right people who support you
Mhm.
and all that. How important is it for us to find that support system in college, and how do we find it?
Huge, 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 huge. And my parents, again, in high school times, I would bring people home. And when they left, my dad would pull me aside and he goes, "Don't ever bring that guy back." I'm like, "Whoa, what happened?" So they had a sixth sense for feeling out if people were good for you or bad for you. And they were right. Every single time they were right, because they saw that that person was in it for themselves or whatever it may be. So I think it starts with your network. Just be careful people aren't using you or trying to ride your coattails. It's really about the team. And I think the key to that is being true to yourself. I mean, be transparent about what you really want. Are you doing in this relationship because of your insecurities, or are you doing it because you just want to hang out? So make sure that doesn't get bound up, because I don't know. Everyone has a different story. Everyone comes from a different past, has different insecurities. But that's probably the thing people worry about too much is what people think about them. Just forget that stuff. It's a bumpy road. The college time is very difficult and full of challenges, and sometimes you feel like, oh my God, am I ever going to make it? But I'm telling you, before you know it, you graduate, and that's when your life really starts to take off. So it's going to be yucky. It's going to be full of challenges and personal bad moments, let's say, where you just don't know if you'll ever get there. And those times, honestly, my mother would say literally, "Ralph, we don't have the check to pay the next semester tuition." I was like, holy shit, I'm done. I'm gonna have to go home and quit this thing. And I would go to the financial aid office, and they would come up with some other loan. They'd, don't worry about it. You pay when you start working. I'm like, okay. There's always a way out, always.
Okay. We spoke about what we should avoid. We spoke about what we should strive for: teamwork, goals, transparency. These are pretty good things. But I want to know about some of the things that you did as college,
Mhm.
as a college student, my bad, and in your early career that you thought were right. What were some of those things that you did right that helped you get here? What were some of those qualities that were absolutely essential for you to climb the corporate ladder?
I think the one thing I might have done right is knowing when to ask for help. If you go, if you spend too much time doing the mistake over and over again, it's like a bad golf swing. You keep grinding the mistake into your mind, you end up not realizing you're making a mistake anymore. So before it's too late, make sure you find a mentor. So important to find. I used to go knock on the door of upperclassmen and say, "Hey, can you help me out?" And initially they look at you like, "Ugh, what does this junior want?" Or freshman want from me. But 9 times out of 10, they'll help you, and they secretly love helping you because it helps them to go over what they learn, but also they feel good. Everyone at the end of the day, they wouldn't be at that place if they didn't believe in education. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Number one, find mentors right away. Sometimes you can be in school and maybe write a letter to somebody that's in your industry, right? Find reverse engineering. You go on Google and reverse engineer your dream job and make connections as you're still a student and ask them for tricks of the trade. You'd be surprised how many people are willing to help. You can do that in school, outside of school, whatever. Okay, and you're gonna laugh, but didn't even have Google when I was a student, right? So there's so many things you could learn and break the code up if you just spend a little time. So yeah, just don't give up so quickly. Ask for help and find a mentor. That would be what I mentors, multiple mentors.
That's something we've been advised a lot. Ask for help.
Yep,
Helps build teamwork, but more importantly, outside, just college networking with the industry. What's
exactly.
the worst thing that can happen? You don't get a response, right? And
And
when
they'll
you do,
remember you when it
it's
comes time for the job. They'll be, that's
yes,
the kid who wrote me a letter or bothered me.
absolutely, yeah. So that's something big that we should keep in mind. Now, before I head on to the questions, I want you to take one more. I want to take you back to 2012,
Yep.
2013, right? Back then, we had this auto magazine,
Hmm.
the Motor Trend, right? And they had this competition, might I say, between the Chevy Corvette and the brand new Dodge Viper,
Mm.
right? And I'd love for you to walk us through what happened with that incident, and I'd love to see what went through your mind and
Okay.
explain your reactions.
So we're launching the new Viper, and we had created the Viper as a GTS, like a Grand Touring, more of a street fast car. We had a performance one that was going to come later, as we've done in the past. And then, of course, the journalists at the time, the Corvette already had their ZR1, which is their high performance version of Corvette, and it was running these very aggressive Michelin, almost racing slick tires. And they beat our record at the Laguna Seca racetrack by quite a bit, by almost 3 seconds. And of course, they love these kind of battles between the OEMs, right? So they just desecrated our new car. And being that we're launching the car, you can't launch like that. If you get killed, especially nowadays, people share it, and all of a sudden your product that's brand new is already dead. So we had emergency meetings. I'm like, all right, we got to pull ahead the performance model, take the wing off that one, put it on this car. And we created what we called TA, which actually is one of the most valuable Vipers now. We created a limited run of these cars that had a better tire from Pirelli. I mean, it was Pirelli. It had the wing downforce, it had the stiffer package. So all the things that we were going to work on, we had to pull ahead. So it was not comfortable. The engineers were not happy. It was like, we're going to do it next year. I go, no, we need it now. So we created the car ahead of schedule and basically gave them a prototype of what we were going to do. It wasn't even ready yet. And we handed the car over, and sure enough, it beat the Corvette record, but by half a second or something. But that was a lot. It was a huge improvement over our time with equal horsepower. So that saved the day, and it made great headlines. We got the cover of the magazine. So it was a good story. But Motor Trend claims that car. They say it's their car. they made us make that car.
Yeah,
I actually
it's
have
it's
it.
just
It's not in this. I have it framed. The car driver in my office. I have that article framed because it was so funny.
mm-hmm.
And I actually
Yeah,
blamed their test driver. I said the test driver is afraid of the car, I think, and I really insulted him.
yeah. It was a pretty good story for me to come across. I mean, technical aspects aside
Yep.
about what the car was about, or uh, the differences in performance. I want you to talk
Mhm.
about the challenges you faced in terms of just as a professional. You know,
Oh,
you were faced with adversity. You just launched a car and they ripped it apart.
yeah. Well, that
How as students can we learn from your reactions and
Well, number one, listen to your. No, you don't always have to listen to your pundits, right? But you have to kind of, uh, when you're designing a product, you try to aim beyond your target a little bit, right? To make sure if you aim just at the target, sometimes it's not enough because other competitors are also trying to do that. So you have to always aim a little beyond. So hopefully you're the best. And our boss did the same thing on when we did the Ram trucks, all these different things. Every time we'd bring the business case and we were saying, oh, we're going to meet our competitor, he goes, meet? What do you mean meet? No, we got to beat, not just meet. So this notion of being the best is something. It's not easy. You can't win everything, of course, but you definitely have to at least look at it, understand what it would take. So I learned a big lesson about aiming a little higher and not being. Sometimes I wanted to throw up a little bit because I had to ask for a lot more than I was given to get to that. But if the people around you know what you're trying to accomplish, I call it campaigning the vision, right? So you have to spend a lot of time, and the Japanese call it nimiwashi, right? So you have the meeting behind the meeting. So you spend time socializing your concept to people. So when the big meeting happens, it's not news to everybody. That's the worst thing you can do is put most executives on the spot and expect them to just go your way because you said it nicely that day. It doesn't work that way in business. So you have to spend a lot. I learned a hard lesson. You have to spend a lot more time socializing your vision, spending a lot of time with people. And you have some difficult characters sometimes that need a little more tender love and care. So you sit them down and say, okay, this is my plan. And it takes a lot more energy to do it that way. But 9 times out of 10, the end result will come very easily. And then what happens is once you've campaigned the vision, the whole thing is easy because everyone gets it. No one's fighting you. Everyone's like, okay, that's what we're doing. We're going to beat Corvette, or we're going to do this. So it's awesome when you align the team. So that's one big lesson. And it's the same thing with your workmates, same thing with your family. Don't just shout out what you want. Socialize it.
Perfect. That's some good advice for handling your stuff, handling your responses when you're at the face of adversity. But we have a few questions, so I'm gonna start heading on to, the questions in the Q&A, and we'll have them unmute themselves and ask the questions themselves. So we have Tucker first.
Okay, cool. So I first want to say thank you very much. That was an amazing presentation. I definitely learned a lot from what you say. So I'm a senior MSU right now. Graduating in the spring. I'm entering the workforce. As someone who is in my position, just graduating, looking to, I guess, aspiring to have a certain a position like yours, really high up, like a CEO or executive type position. What steps can I take right now to sort of reach that goal, years down the road? Like, what can I do to better myself now that I get there eventually?
Well, I guess you're starting off with I get the attitude of wanting to put that as a name, right? So if you have a goal, I mean, I plan my life in 5-year chunks, right? 5 years, I want to be here, 5 years there. Not too far beyond that because the world changes around us a little too much for going too far out there. So it goes back to the mentoring story. Once you get inside whatever company you end up with, I wouldn't say day one, just give it a little, do the orientation at least. But once you're in, within a few months, try to find mentors. Again, the mentoring thing is so critical. And maybe you got to be careful, don't be too aggressive initially because they're going to think you're just about advancement, not about learning. And that's what I was telling you a story about people that across my desk before they've even been hired are already asking that they want my job. It's like, come on, man. I earned I spent 25 years getting here. You can't do it in 3 years. So you have to realize it's not something that's going to happen overnight. But the people that tend to make it to the top are a balance of aggression and curiosity. So it's good to be aggressive. It's good to really auger in, but don't overdo it. Make sure you can back up everything that you say. Make sure you know what you're talking about. You're not just repeating things you've heard or emulating behaviors, because some behaviors are from a huge amount of experience. So if you're emulating something that's not real, people figure that out very quickly. So surround yourself with amazing mentors. Again, as high as you dare. Knock on the highest door you can, and if they're willing to take you in, it's only going to help you. And name recognition. Honestly, that matters in companies. Is people have to know who you are. So you do it two ways. Most of the time you do it through hard work and people recognize your name because it's attached to great projects. And other times you combine that with familiarity by having a group of mentors. Eventually you create a bit of, a social dynamic where they go, oh yeah, I mentored that guy. I know him, and your name just becomes second nature to them. That's important. So the worst thing you can do is just after the work is over, just go home or don't be involved. I mean, sometimes a little bit of socialization helps. And a lot of my friends after work, we just go to the local pub. We used to. Now we do it on Zoom or whatever. But that socialization is actually it's an undiscussed, something you don't learn in school, but that's actually where the relationships are made, and it's people of all colors, men, women, whatever. That hangout time away from the pressure of work is where you do your best work. Sometimes you learn about people the most, and that's when your stock goes up. So be careful not to be too much of a hermit, if that makes any sense.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, next up we have David.
Hi. I wanna ask. So I see you find your passion in an early age. You love designing cars. When you were in high school, how would you suggest young people, like in college, to find what they want to do in their life?
And that's tough. And I know of some designers that have actually been engineers, gone back to school. So not everyone has my story, right? And you may be in a, you know, how would I say, you may be in a career for a few years and then discover another one and completely do an about face. I think the biggest thing you can do is, as you search for whoever you may work for, make sure you like the company. You know, do your homework on them and make sure they stand for the same things you believe in, or at least, or there's something attractive to you about the company. And once you get in the door, especially of a semi decent sized company, you'd be amazed what opportunities come your way. There might be parts of the company like, ooh, I could apply for that job, because what at least we do it at FCA at Stellantis now. We actually post jobs. So we have, just in the one building in Auburn Hills, we have 15,000 people that work there. And within, it's almost like its own job shop inside. There's people that start in one part of the company and end up on a completely different side a few years later, just because they noticed the job postings. So it's half the battle is just getting into the industry. Don't worry so much about it now as a student. Just jump in, and once you're in that industry, you'll hear about others, and you'll bop around. Don't, you know, the first part is about getting your feet on the ground, getting some kind of job, and then from there it'll just keep rolling. So don't worry about it, but don't jump around too fast either. You know, the younger generation tends to stay at a job sometimes as little as a year. And sometimes if we look at a resume and we see someone has jumped 5 times in 6 years or 5 times in 3 years, it makes you wonder a little bit, what are they doing, you know? So you want to be somewhere long enough to learn a little bit about humans.
And a second question, when you mentioned about like the Avengers picture, like building a team,
Yeah.
like once I have something that I really want to do, like how can I find a team? How can I find people that want to do something related to me?
That's a very good question. Now, it depends. We have, if it's a private thing, like a project you have that's not related to the company, you can create a club at work. You can find other people that are like-minded and create a club. We have actually that at our company. We have, we call them business resource groups. If your idea is you think is compelling, of course, share it with your senior leadership. Be careful you don't start on your own without some kind of permission, just because if you're using company resources, sometimes you can get in trouble. But it goes back to what I said before about campaigning the vision. You know, do your homework, put a little kit together, a 10-page, 10 slides or something like that, that explains it. And in the process of putting it on paper, you'll find that you have to answer questions. You haven't asked all the questions yet. So when you have to explain it to a senior, somebody's like, oh shit, I don't know my detail there. So don't just spew a couple of ideas out and expect that everyone's going to clap for you and think, oh, let's go do this thing, because it's not deep enough. You know, they want to see that you've given it the thought. You know?
Okay, yep. Thank you.
Got it.
Yeah, thank you, David. We are rounding up 8 o'clock. It's actually 8:01. So
One last
Ralph,
question. Are you done? Okay.
Okay.
One
No, we
bonus
have a few
question and then one bonus
we
question.
have a few questions, so I just wanted to make sure that you have the time
Yeah.
to ask more questions.
I have about 10 more minutes and I have to go, but
Okay, sounds good. Next we have Dave.
I'll do rapid fire. All right.
Hi,
Dave.
Dave Yonkers here. I'm the project manager for the MSU Formula Racing team. We'd love to
Yeah.
have you by our we'd love to have you by our shop when everything returns to normal.
God, I'd love that. I want to drive those one day. I'd love to drive one of those.
Yeah, we'd love to have you out. But
I'm a racer, by the way. I used to race cars. Good.
My question for you is, how do you stand out in a workplace that consists of thousands of other people?
Wow, that's a very good question. I think, whoa. That's a big one, because first of all, don't try to stand out, because if you put too much effort into standing out, you might do it for the wrong reasons. It's about your achievements. Wow, that's a good question. Because, okay, so in my career, I did a lot of marketing, and you saw those things with Jay Leno. I did a lot of that. And in some ways it was good for me, because I got out there and did some marketing. I wasn't afraid. I was the guy that when the media team said, Ralph, I said, yeah, sure, go ahead. It was very nerve-wracking, honestly, to do it. But once I was out there, I got better and better at doing media training. So first of all, not being afraid to be a public speaker. That's one of the best things you can do, is learn. I don't know if they have classes at MSU, or you can even take them privately, but not being afraid to do public speaking. That's one of the most untaught things that are very important in any kind of business life or even personal life, public speaking. So get good at it, practice it wherever you can. Be eloquent, get your points across quickly, and that'll get you able to get there, right? Get the story. People want to hear you when you're good at speaking publicly. So that's helped me. but don't ever seek it, so to speak. It should happen naturally. If you try to just kind of be the center of attention, it can actually turn people off a little bit. So you have to find the right balance. And that's what I mean. Sometimes I had so much media exposure that some people were thought I was seeking it. I was like, no, it just kind of happened because you got, good at it and people ask you to do stuff. So you have to be kind of conscious of your image that you project a little bit and be humble. Never, I used to, when I was young, I used to, you were just, I this, I that, I did, and that's kiss of death, try to avoid the I concept, and people actually like you more if you're more humble. So go ahead, but if you do great work and you represent yourself well, but always remember the team, you'll be the favorite guy, right? Instead of, if you seek that, people will be like, oh, he's just allowed, whatever. So, all right, if that makes sense.
Thanks so much.
All right, and I really want to drive your race car someday. So.
Yeah, let's connect after this. We'll get you in it.
Okay.
All right. Next up, we have Eric.
Okay, so I kind of have like a two-part question. So starting off, I'm the vice president of the National Society of Black Engineers here at Michigan State. And so what I was really wondering is, so as a Black man, what would you say was the biggest obstacle you faced in navigating the engineering field? And then secondly, like what advice would you give to an aspiring engineer coming up that could like relate back to my org?
Woo! Wow. I think, and now there's a word for it. I didn't know what it was when I was coming up because we didn't really talk about it, but you've heard the term now. It's very trendy now, called microaggressions. So,
Right.
so I suffered a lot of that, and it wasn't malintended, to be honest. I think actually a lot of people did it innocently. They didn't really think about it. But I'll give you a very simple example. I was told several times by other executives, "Is you're so articulate," or "Wow, you're." I even had one guy say, "You're not really Black." I'm like, "Oh, ouch," and that's really painful for a Black person to hear. So that was hard for me at the time. I didn't know how to deal with it, but since then I'm actually the president of the STAN, the Stellantis African Ancestry Network diaspora. So we actually talk about that now. We found a way to let that out, right? So I don't know if you have that at your school, but having a small club of people to share your war stories with, to kind of get it off your chest, so you don't carry that in you. You don't carry that anger in you at all. You talk about it, and you'll find that a lot of times I've actually confronted some of those people that said that to me now, because now it's like, oh, it's not just me. It's just something they say, So by confronting the people that say it, I feel better now. I was like, okay, now they know I've helped them, and I did it in a nice way, not an aggressive way. So that helps get rid of that part of it. That's really the only thing, the friction I would say would be that. But I think being around being the president of this group at work, there's people that handle it differently. Some make too big a deal out of it and actually impedes them because they're so concerned about this persecution thing that they can't focus on work. They're more kind of caught up in that, and it slows them down a little bit. It makes them too protective, too anxious, whatever. So I think balancing it and just proving, unfortunately, sometimes a person of color may have to achieve a more consistent level of performance for them to be taken as seriously. But that's just the way it is. And the more you do it, the person after you won't have to do it as much. And I know I've paved the way for the next Black, executive or whatever. So you do carry that with you. You do carry, whatever color you are, but anything that isn't the norm paves the way for the next time. So it eventually becomes the norm. So that's just something you have to realize that is part of being a minority in this system, and eventually it'll get better. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great.
All right. Next up, we have Abdullah.
Hi, my name is Abdullah. I'm a huge car fan and a petrol head, and this is actually sort of a dream come true for me, meeting someone like you. My question is, like, since you're in design, a lot of people are gonna criticize on your design because it's the first thing they notice about a car. How do you deal with that criticism and like find the energy to bounce back and create something awesome again?
So I go to my bedroom and I bury my face in my pillow and I scream as loud as I can. And being that I'm on Instagram, sometimes I get feedback right away. And I've been around this long enough, like some people didn't like the look of the new Ram at all when it came out. And that's normally because you change something, people tend to react, but it's kicking ass. And we've never sold more. We're getting better prices than ever. Our heavy duties is going crazy. So the people that didn't like it, sometimes just because it's a little different. So I tend to ignore them. I believe in myself and my team. But it does get to me. Sometimes if I hear it enough, then something's wrong, and if something's wrong, we got to fix it and we go back and redesign it. And, so you don't ignore it. I mean, criticism is part of the business, but take it in stride, try to balance out what is just natural reaction, initial, which eventually things grow on people. But you have to be able to detect the difference between what's a problem and what's just a comment, and do something about it. And also sharing it. It's okay, because you'll find the more you discuss it with your friends, some love it, some hate it. That's normal. And after a while, it becomes you become desensitized to it. You don't worry about it so much. That's one answer to that question. But I think you have to develop a thick skin in anything like that. You just have to not take it personal and realize that some people just like to hate for the sport of it. Just like to get it. It's so easy now to get on the keyboard and blow missiles across the digital world. And I've actually met those people. Sometimes I confront them, and turns out when you talk to them face to face, they're like, oh, I really didn't mind it that much. I just thought it was fun. They just want to be the center of attention. So you have to realize that.
Thank you.
Wow.
That's a great answer. Thank you.
But screaming in your pillow is very effective. All right, Ian, did you
Next
have a
up, we have
question? Oh, sorry.
we have Ian. Couple more. Last one.
That's a
All right.
picture. When is that? That picture's from elementary school or something? What is that from? Yeah. I love his background pictures. This awesome picture with the blue screen like we all had in high school.
Oh, that's from my senior pictures. Yeah.
It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I just wanted to first of all say it's been really cool listening to you today, because I'm going to be interning at Stellantis this summer. So to kind of, I'm really hyped up to go, especially now after hearing your story.
Oh, wonderful.
And especially, I like that you talked about the Pacifica a lot too, selfishly, because I love the Pacifica.
Great. Good to hear.
But one thing I'm kind of curious about, I guess, is, we're seeing data grow so much nowadays, and it's being used in so many new places. Is there anything that, in design, we're seeing data and analytics really growing the last few years?
Yes, and yes. So I'll give you an example. I have the UX team is under me. 6 years ago, we didn't even have a UX team, so user experience, that stuff I showed you. We actually took our internal IT guy and asked him if he would start to create this team, and it blew up. We're actually hiring now. We have almost 50 people in that department now, and we need another 10 easily. So that's we're actually generating so much data that we don't know what to do with it. So our cars, especially starting about last year, are super connected. We're basically putting all this stuff on server farms. We're collecting how people are using the cars. Not as creepy as some of our Silicon Valley friends, but that data's out there, right? I mean, as you know, as you travel with your phone, it creates traffic flow and all kinds of stuff, buying purchase behaviors. So there's a lot of data. We're trying to figure out how to manage it. And we're realizing in order to process it, we're trying to figure out algorithms that can measure habits. We're using it for warranty, for example, for any kind of vehicle issues. If we see a certain car have too many of the same issue, that means there's an issue, a spike, right? And we want to fix it quickly before it becomes a bigger problem. So that's how we're using data. But now we're getting more sophisticated in, if we know the car has an oil change and we know that their favorite dealer is the one they go to on, 3 miles away, we can actually coordinate that visit for them. So things like that. We're trying to, at the end of the day, we would want the data to be used for the better. So to make the experience of the consumer almost flawless, where they love owning the car, they enjoy it. At the same time, we don't want to ever over market to them and make it a cumbersome thing where they're marketing to me and pushing all this stuff. We want to make sure that we use the data in a noble way, right? So, but it's a young part of the business that's growing like crazy. The good news, it's all there. We just have to figure out what to do with it.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
We need you, so please come on over. All right, I think we're out of time, but I'm hoping that's what Addy wanted out of all this. So thank you.
Yep.
And
One more
Addy,
thing
I have
for
one
you.
thing to say, Addy. I'm jealous of your hair. I would kill to have your hair. So you just enjoy it. Run your
We
fingers
all are,
through that.
Ralph. We all are.
God, I had a fro when I was your age, and I miss it so much.
I was about to tell you that. I prefer, you look perfectly handsome right now, but I prefer the fro, definitely.
I do have a wig somewhere I could put on for Halloween.
But I'm going to pick your brain with one last thing. You've had some impressive builds.
Okay.
Which one's your favorite? Was it the baby Bentley or the Bentley Pharrell?
You mean
was it the Viper?
The cars I've done, or my personal ones, my personal cars?
Oh, the cars you've made. That's accessible for all of us. I don't have access to your private collection.
Wow. Well, Vipers are getting to be accessible. Wow. Well, honestly, in terms of significance, it would be the Challenger. only because it comes in so many flavors, you know, all the way from the V6 all-wheel drive all the way up to the Crazy Demon and Red Eyes. So that car, and by the way, the Challenger is the youngest average buying age. It's crazy. We don't know what's happening. I mean, young buyers like 30s, and how they're affording these cars, we don't know. So that's pretty cool that we've made a car that, even though it has a retro look, it appeals to a broad range of people.
All right. Well, we are super appreciative of your time today. Thank you so much for coming over and, sharing your experiences with us. This was immensely